Hello and welcome back to the least watched series on my channel. Today we will be going from number 70 to 61. Let's go. Number 70, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. This is a recent addition to my favorite films, but wow, what a grand one. Over the last couple years, I've been very despondent towards longer movies. If I see a movie over a 2-hour running time, I tend to roll my eyes, because more often than not, it doesn't warrant its 2.5 to 3 hour running time. But the common denominator is that it's newer movies, not older ones, and I guess the cure to my woes was to go back to the classics, because this is a 3-hour movie that certainly doesn't feel like it, despite its incredibly simplistic plot. First, it starts out as a frenemy rivalry between Blondie, played by Clint Eastwood, and Tuco, played by Eli Wallach, and then later on, both know where a stash of gold is, but both only know half of the information, and aren't giving up their half of the info to the other. So now it's two smarmy, greedy assholes trying to get a big payday while another guy named Angel Eyes is also trying to find the gold. It's an epic odyssey that is awe-striking to say the least. I was on the edge of my seat throughout the entire thing, and not once did it ever feel boring. I was worried because this is said to be not only the greatest Western of all time, but one of the greatest movies ever made. But the overhype didn't even kill this movie for me. It is an absolute cinematic experience in every sense of the word. Clint Eastwood is great as always, but Eli Wallach steals the fucking show as Tuco. He was a conniving fucking bastard, and you absolutely love to hate him. Lee Van Cleef is also excellent in every sense of the word and plays a brilliant sociopath. Ennio Morricone's score might even be the best part of this movie, creating music that is probably one of the most recognizable musical scores of all time. This movie isn't going to be for everybody, because I know for many people, Westerns aren't their cup of tea. But if you have an open mind, this really is as brilliant as everyone says it is. Number 69, Starman. This movie was pretty much John Carpenter's answer to E.T., in a way. After the thing failed, both critically and financially, with many blaming E.T. with its more positive view of aliens, this was Carpenter's way of saying, alright, this is what you fuckers want? Well, here you fucking go, assholes. And with that, we got another excellent film from the master himself. This is probably one of Carpenter's most underrated fare because it's not mentioned a ton despite being one of his best movies. In my opinion, of course. It's just one of those movies that is weirdly beautiful and wholesome. It shows the beauty of humanity that is just really touching and something I absolutely adore about this movie. But even despite this, the characters and their relationship are very great as well. Bridges and Allen have great chemistry with one another, and Bridges delivers such a great performance that balances the line between human and alien perfectly. I also believe the score by Jack Nitzsche is probably the best score for a Carpenter movie that he did not do himself. Yes, even more than Morricone's for The Thing. While Carpenter thrives in horror, and that is when he is at his best, this movie proves that he is more than that and can do beautiful movies just as good as his horrifying ones.
John Carpenter's Starman.
Number 68, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. The movie that everyone loved as a kid, but also incredibly scarred them. It was kind of because of this that I didn't really fully love this movie until I managed to survive the tunnel scene. I still really liked the movie, but I was scared shitless of that fucking scene. I don't think I watched it fully until just a couple of years ago. Despite this, it is one of my favorites for a reason. Well, many reasons. Gene Wilder is absolutely excellent as Willy Wonka. I couldn't have imagined anyone else better for the role, and Johnny Depp's iteration certainly proves that. Well, we'll just have to see how Timmy Shamalama Ding Dong does with the prequel that nobody asked for. But anyway, to the task at hand, Wilder is absolutely excellent, the score is beautiful, the story is slow but intriguing, and for a kid's movie, it's almost shockingly adult. Like, most of the movie feels like a documentary in terms of the world's reaction to Willy Wonka and his candy, and outside of Charlie's story. It's certainly a weird movie that shouldn't have worked, but it magically does. With all these different ideas and story beats and themes, it's astounding that this became as popular as it was. But it was the 70s, so that might have something to do with it. But I'm very happy that Mel Stewart brought this wonderful world of pure imagination to the silver screen, even if Roald Dahl was being a whiny bitch about it. Number 67, Total Recall. one of the best sci-fi action movies of all time. In the first half of the 90s, Arnold was on fucking top with his movies, being in hit after hit after hit, and this is the one that started the decade. It's one of those action movies that isn't as surface level as people think it is, feeding into the idea of what is real and what isn't, and Verhoeven did a really great job in executing that to the audience because it's still debated among fans to this day. Arnold is fantastic as always, the supporting cast is awesome, and the villains, mainly Michael Ironside and Ronnie Cox, are fucking awesome in all the right ways. The action is visceral, the effects are pretty damn great, even to this day, with maybe the exception of a couple scenes, and it is a blast from beginning to end. While Arnold is at his best with James Cameron, his collaboration with Verhoeven is definitely up there, and just makes me wish we got that goddamn Crusades movie. Number 66, Battle Royale. What if The Hunger Games was great? Well, you'd get this movie. Kidding aside though, this movie is all kinds of fucking awesome. It's straight to the point. Less than 30 minutes in, you already get kids fucking murdering each other. It trims the unnecessary fat of the Hunger Games franchise, but manages to make something way more interesting than those movies ever hoped to be. Don't get me wrong, I like them, but this is just an action horror masterpiece in every sense of the word. The main characters, Shuya and Noriko, are very likable and sympathetic characters, and the visceral and brutal nature of this movie makes this feel more real and scarier. It's not over the top exaggerated, it feels very real, and it is extremely horrifying, but in all the right ways. It's an extremely great movie that does not get talked about enough, so please do yourself a favor and watch this cult classic. Number 65, Dark City. Pretty much the good version of The Matrix, but with actual depth. An incredibly dark neo-gothic neo-noir that is just brilliant. While not as good as Alex Proyas' previous film with The Crow, this is still an incredibly great and layered film. Blending old film noir with dark nihilistic themes and ideas, a black and white setting mixed with intriguing science fiction and great development, undertones, surreal imagery, and again, adding to the idea of what is real and what isn't. Proyas absolutely commanded the neo-gothic subgenre in the 90s, and actually executed it properly, unlike someone like Tim Burton. Yeah, I said it. Rufus Sewell, Jennifer Connelly, William Hurt all do a fantastic job in this over-exaggerated and strange world. I don't even mind the Chosen One allegory this time around because it feels like it's actually written well. As I said, it's essentially The Matrix, but with a touch of Bourne Identity. This is a fantastic neo-noir that needs to get rediscovered. Number 64, The Fugitive. Sometimes TV adaptations do work. Probably the best of its kind in that respect, this is a movie that is honestly more remembered than its source material with how fucking great it really is. It's one of those movies that once it gets going, it really gets going and doesn't let up. Harrison Ford is absolutely brilliant, and even though in certain corners, he's more so just known for Han Solo and Indiana Jones, unfortunately. But hey, remember, Ford is actually a really great fucking actor, and this is one of the many examples that proves this. Tommy Lee Jones is also extremely excellent and has great chemistry with Ford when they are on screen together. Honestly, this movie kinda speaks for itself. It got tons and tons of praise back then, and gets tons of praise now. All well deserved. Coming from the man that would go on to bring us another masterpiece, Holes. Number 63, Shoot 'em Up. Now this one is if you just want a non-stop thrill ride that refuses to let up. Again, but even more so. Great characters, action, humor, and music. If you love rock and roll, crass humor, guns, and over-the-top yet brilliant action, then this is the movie for you. It's one of those movies that was kinda ahead of its time, because if this came out in the mid-2010s, I think it would be remembered a lot more. But for what we have, it's still a brilliant action comedy. Clive Owen is a great and hilarious lead, Paul Giamatti is a batshit insane and also very hilarious villain, and Monica Bellucci as well. Monica fucking Bellucci. Don't really need to explain myself there. This is just one of those movies that is such a great and hilarious time that it'll stick with you long after you watch it. Number 62, Logan. I will forever stand by that this is probably the best Marvel movie we've ever gotten, and since almost everything is under the House of Mouse, that will probably not change anytime soon. Pretty much the Wolverine movie that everyone had been clamoring for years, and we finally got it. As great as The Wolverine was, it unfortunately falters with its very over-the-top third act. But Logan manages to channel great storytelling, characterization, and take horrible source material and make something great out of it, which is certainly a fucking achievement. Hugh Jackman is once again fucking fantastic as Wolverine, same goes with Patrick Stewart as Professor X. Daphne Keane is great as X-23, as well as the villain in Boyd Holbrook, and Stephen Merchant as Caliban, as well as Richard E. Grant, even though he doesn't have a ton of screen time. Again, more brutal action, great themes, and a great ending to most people's favorite X-Man. It's just... everything about this movie is so fucking fantastic that it almost makes me forget that Ryan Reynolds is going to piss all over it with Deadpool 3. Number 61, Reanimator. Final film for this video, and it is a weird one, but still great. Stuart Gordon directing, Jeffrey Combs starring, over-the-top gore, throw in some Lovecraft, and hilariously stupid antics, and you got yourself one of the most ridiculous horror movies of the 1980s. Honestly, I really cannot do this film justice. I know I say this a lot, and it's becoming a tired reason, but for this movie especially, you gotta just see this, and to a lesser extent its sequels, for yourself. It's brilliantly stupid in all the right ways.
It will scare you to pieces.
But that is all for my favorite films today. See you next time.